Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, on Newsmakers today, we continue our series with the candidates for governor. Tom Knox, one of those candidates, is here, and I'll talk with him. And then Robert Swift from Times-Shamrock Newspapers is here to bring us what? Another legislative update. We're going to find out what's going on in the Pennsylvania legislature. All of that following these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, again, thanks for watching and welcome back. Well, Tom Knox is sitting across from me. He's a candidate for governor. Let me tell you something about a couple of things about this guy. One thing is he ran for mayor, Democratic primary, come in second in the city of Philadelphia. Man, that was quite a contest. You beat out Congressman Fattah. You didn't beat Mike Nutter, but you surprised a lot of people there. Now, you spent some money to do it, but what was that all about?
Well, Terry, you know, I wanted to become mayor of Philadelphia. So I spent some of my own money to help facilitate
well, it's your money.
that.
Nothing wrong with that.
But most people thought I was going to come in dead last.
Yeah.
And they thought the only person that would be, the other person was going to come in dead last would be Michael Nutter.
Yeah.
Fattah was out there in front.
Right.
And, you know, he's a wonderful, I like Fattah. He's a nice man. He's
Congressman
well-intentioned.
from Philadelphia, by the way. Okay. All right, well, let's go. I want to get on to the big issue here. Yeah. I was just introducing you that way. Healthcare executive, business guy, entrepreneur. You have a lot of titles. If you had to put, like one sentence after your name for what you've done through your career, what would you say?
One sentence?
What have you done?
I've created jobs. I've helped people better their lives.
Yeah.
And I've, I guess, produced services for people throughout the state. I've been in a lot of businesses. I was also owned a bank.
Yeah.
And making loans to people that needed them and helping people find mortgages. Those types of things were...
Right. Okay. I just wanted, I never know when I hear you, how do you kind of identify you? I mean, somebody will say, well, they were, spent 50 years in the same company or 20 years working in government, but you've had a diverse career. Okay. Let's get to the heart of this. Tom Knox, if you're elected governor, what is it that there's 2 or 3 things that you walk in the door and you say, I want to do these 2 or 3 things? What are they?
Well, the first, what's on everybody's mind.
Right.
And I've been across Pennsylvania and I've talked to a lot of people and I hear I see their pain. They're worried about jobs. They're worried about paying for their health care.
Right.
Just keeping their health care is important. They're worried about educating their kids, finding enough money to pay their college tuitions. A lot of people are concerned about food.
Right.
A lot of people, today I just read a report that 71% of the people polled said that one of their concerns was making sure that they had enough food to put on their table. Terry, I'll tell you, I grew up poor, as you know. I grew up in public housing. And one sound I'll never forget is my mother crying herself to sleep at night because she couldn't afford to feed her children.
Yeah.
And, I don't want that for any kids in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I didn't like it then, I don't like it now, and if I become governor, I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Does that mean that in terms of the policies, we'd be talking about, sort of a continuation of economic development programs, expansions in education? Now, you're a business guy, you got to pay for these programs, but what kind of policies would you pursue?
Well, yeah, you're right. You have to pay for programs. We need jobs. The key to jobs, there's a couple of keys to jobs. We need to have in Pennsylvania, we need to have our infrastructure repaired. Right now we have a terrible state of disrepair. Our infrastructure is in a terrible state of disrepair. And we need to get a trained and educated workforce. I think education is a key to that trained and educated workforce. But it's not necessarily kindergarten and K to 12 or college. We need to get an emphasis on community colleges in Pennsylvania. This is a place where kids that have dropped out of school, 50% of the kids in the urban area and all over the state of Pennsylvania, whether it's Erie or Scranton or York or Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, Scranton, 50% drop out of high school. We need to get, they eventually get themselves together and they want a second chance. Community colleges are the place that they can get a second chance. You can't get into a mainstream college. I know that personally because I had a son that had that problem. Couldn't get in the mainstream because he dropped out. He didn't drop out of college, but he had another problem. And we need to make sure that these kids have an opportunity. It only costs $2,400 to send your kid to community college, or for you as an adult to go to community college, unless you don't live in a county that has one, and then it's doubled. We need to change that. But getting these kids back to a second chance, getting them educated, and remember, you can get vocational training in community colleges, getting a trained and educated workforce, getting our infrastructure repaired, and getting some basic programs that government assists is going to get, is something I want to get done.
Okay, what about Governor Rendell, if he's known for anything, this moves the education agenda, and then his big economic development thrust with billions of dollars in bonds that were floated, that who knows whether the state would be able to finance that again, coming out of this recession with a big debt and a huge indebtedness because of the borrowing. Do you think that the state should be engaged in that kind of big-time borrowing in order to promote economic development programs to bring jobs to different... That's pretty controversial, but lots of Republicans signed on to those measures, by the way.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think Rendell does a great job. I like Ed Rendell. I worked for him for a while as deputy mayor in the city of Philadelphia. I was in charge of management and productivity. He brought me in to help alleviate that $250 million budget deficit we've had for 3 years running. And he needed somebody that actually understood business and how to get management and productivity initiatives instituted and worked on. It took me 18 months. In 18 months, we turned a $250 million budget deficit into a $10 million surplus. I told him I'd stay until we did that, and at the end of 18 months,
you were out of there.
Well, I was working for $1 a year, and my wife didn't like that.
No one would like that, I guess, but go ahead.
So 18 months later, we did it, and I left.
So you think that borrowing, if your programs cost money...
If you find a dedicated revenue source, then I don't mind borrowing. For example, if we need to beef up our green initiatives in Pennsylvania. So if we were to, for example, put an extraction fee on the Marcellus Shale, and we used it for a specific purpose, like making, getting cleaner air, cleaner environment, cleaner drinking water for our kids, making sure that the mess that the Marcellus Shale is going to create gets cleaned up correctly and our environment gets protected. I don't mind taking money from them to do that, but I don't mind, and even taking money from them and creating a bond which will fund some of these things.
All right, we're going to run to break. I want to talk about deregulation, electricity. These caps are coming off. We've talked about this on the show before. We'll be back with Tom Knox following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is sponsored by Citizens to Protect PA Jobs. When businesses add jobs, people prosper. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PAConstructionJobs.com. For more information about rewarding careers in the highway construction industry, visit PAConstructionJobs.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program with Tom Knox, a Democratic candidate seeking the Democratic nomination. I didn't point that out. He's a candidate for governor. All right, Tom, let's look. As you know, these rate caps are scheduled to come off in about a month. PPL, and we now know residential rates will go up 30%, business rates, some higher, some lower, but this is going to have a huge impact on the economy. You've been highlighting this in your campaign. Make your points.
Well, look, these utilities have been telling us for years that rate caps are not going to become, rate increases aren't going to come about. We get close to the rate caps coming off, the first thing you hear is a 29.7% rate increase for households, 36 for medium-sized businesses, 18 for smaller businesses, and that's not fair. These companies have had like PP&L, I believe, had 148% increase in their profits over the last 5 years. That's 40% a year. Why do they need a rate increase of this size at this time? I mean, it's the only thing it's going to do is enable them to have more earnings, so their dividends go up. If their dividends go up, the price of their stock goes up, and the executives start getting are able to exercise their stock options and make money, and that's why these things are happening. We need to get a governor that's going to stop this. Now, I have a plan for doing that.
Well, it takes legislate. Go ahead. Tell me your plan.
I believe that we can have a public purchasing authority Right now, when you buy electricity rates, you have to pay, everybody has to pay the same price, the highest price bid for the day. So what electricity companies do is they manipulate the price. Out in California, they manipulated it 1 year to the tune of $71 billion of extra costs. Mm-hmm. They do that here. 45% of our electricity is provided by nuclear energy, 51% by coal, and 4% by gas and oil. Gas and oil costs 5 times more than nuclear. If you sell any gas or oil that day, then nuclear gets they get the same price, which is 5 times. They get a windfall. Coal, which is 2.5 times less, gets a big increase, and everybody else gets has to pay the bill. If we have a purchasing authority, that purchasing authority can buy the nuclear on a long-term contract at the lower rate, right, the coal at the lower rate, and not buy any of the gas and oil, or if they have to buy it, buy small amounts of it, but they can use that.
The state legislature would have to create this entity, is that correct?
That's right.
And now the legislature is currently in this debate. We thought they were having a debate about whether they were going to permit the caps to come off. I mean, you're not governor now. The legislature is going to make a decision. If you were governor now, would you tell the legislature, let the caps come off or don't let the caps come off?
I'd say don't let those caps come off. They're making enough money. I'd let them increase their rates by 1.5% plus inflation each year. I'd keep them on for 3 years while we were setting up this purchasing authority. And once we get the purchasing authority set up, takes a few, and you can run these things with like 15 people. You don't need, this is not a big bureaucracy. 15 people are going to do this. And we're going to save hundreds of millions of dollars for our ratepayers.
Is this plan done in any other states?
Yes, it's done in 4 or 5 other states. Right now, the newest one to consider it is Connecticut, and we're looking at how they're doing it. Illinois is doing it. Okay. Wisconsin's doing it. A few others, I forget all of them. But what we want to do is just model ours after one of theirs. You know, find the best parts of all of it, put it together. Right. If these energy prices are going to go up, businesses are going to move out. If businesses move out, that's less jobs for us. We need to get the prices lower so that instead of businesses moving out, Terry, they're moving in. Right. I was talking to Alcatel Middle. They spend $32 million at their Coatesville plant a year on electricity. They have 850 employees. That's about $36,000 a year per employee. They told me if their rates go up, they're going to move out. Or not going to move out, they're going to disperse business to other parts of the country.
You have about a minute left. We're a big energy producing state. You agree with that?
I agree.
Big energy. Big. You would think we could find a way to produce energy for our own residents at a lower cost, given the fact that it's all produced here. Well, or do I got that mixed up?
Well, you can, except it would interfere with their profits. I don't think people need to make this kind of money. I don't mind companies making a fair profit so that they can pass it on to their shareholders and so that they can do other things with it.
Before I let you go, there's the other option here is now people can shop around, you know, and choose another provider, electric provider, and good idea, bad idea.
It's a good idea. The problem is that when they got these rate caps put in place, they were supposed to take this $12 billion that we gave them in rate concessions at that time was $6 billion plus $6 billion in interest. They were supposed to take that money and develop wind, solar, hydro, geothermal, and they didn't do it. You know, they didn't keep their promise. And I don't think we need to keep our promise of letting the rate caps come off until we get authority into place.
All right, there you have it. Tom Knox, seeking the Democratic nomination. You're welcome here. Anytime you have something you want to talk about, give us a holler and we'll put you on. All right, Robert Swift, Times-Shamrock Newspapers. What are our friends in the legislature up to this week and maybe next week? We'll see you in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Well, it wouldn't be Pennsylvania Newsmakers if we didn't do a legislative update. Joining me, as often is the case, is one of the state's leading journalists, Robert Swift with Times-Shamrock Newspapers. All right, Robert, look, they're in, but they're not in. They've not been in session for, collectively, the House and the Senate, the Pennsylvania House and Senate, they seem to be out all of the time. Now, what's...
It's been a very strange year for legislative business. They've been, since the budget was passed October 9th, it's been a handful of days. They're looking up right now at some grand finale on December 15th and 16th when they're going to try to
So 2 days they're going to try to do everything?
Yeah, cram
now,
everything.
Hold on a minute. Let's go through this. We just talked about Marcellus Shale with the caps coming off of electricity with Tom Knox. We got Marcellus Shale, what they're going to do about taxing that, if at all. We have table games, right? We have higher ed funding. It's not like they don't have things on their plate, right?
The reality is the caps, to address the PP&L cap, which comes off January 1st, is probably too late. The question of the cap issue in regards to the other major utilities, which are the end of 2010, PICO, and there's another major one.
So there's some time for that.
For the other two, but for PP&L,
yeah, but
that's
PPL is
too late.
a million customers or something.
It's going to happen, and what they've started to do is talk up, this is state officials now, talking up the energy competition. New companies coming in, and that's what they're urging on conservation, the people who face this.
All right, well, let's talk about energy a little bit. One of the huge issues where everybody thinks, as a big energy producing state, we can produce more energy and maybe raise some tax dollars is in this, natural gas formation or natural gas taking it out of the Marcellus Shale formation. I think I got that right. Yes. Where does that all stand?
The Marcellus Shale severance tax that the governor proposed in February did not make it into the final budget, but it's still a live issue. There's still a push by the House Democratic caucus, to name one, and the governor to have it in next year's budget. So that's still out there. There's still obviously opposition from a lot of Republican lawmakers to that.
And from some segments of the business community.
In the business communities trying to avoid
But now that's
it.
so we understand this. This would be a tax on the extraction of the natural gas at this, what they call it, a severance tax. And then there would be an additional tax we're talking about on how many cubic feet on the cubic feet. Do I understand that right?
It's a two-part deal.
Two-part tax.
Gas production and cubic feet. And then on the other issue related to that is there is a lot of call for more, on both sides of the aisle now, greater regulation of water. There's water contamination issues that are cropping up. Joe Sestak, the U.S. Senate candidate, jumped into the issue this week. There's federal legislation. He chided our inspector, the incumbent, for not doing enough on this issue. So it's a live issue. It will be part of the thing we're talking about here through the next year.
All right, well, let's go. So we've got the utility rate, the electric rates coming off, and it doesn't look like that's going to be done. Marcellus Shale, that's a big deal. Likely to be done this fall?
No. This is 2010.
Well, then what are they hanging around for?
They're hanging around for this table games, which they've been painstakingly negotiating.
Painstakingly?
And I think sometimes they're trying to pinch money from it's a pinch bill maybe, to get money from some of the interest.
All right, well, we're going to run to a break. And I want to talk about the table games and higher ed funding, which the state-related universities, Penn State, held hostage. Can you believe that? We'll be back with Robert Swift in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Penn Future, where we believe that every environmental victory grows the economy, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back. Robert Swift from Times-Shamrock Newspapers doing a little legislative update. All right, Robert, now you know you've covered this for a long time. We are literally now going to kick high gear into the governor's election. And boy, does anything get done in a gubernatorial election year worth talking about?
Not much, and I think this continuing year with the continuing revenue problems the state has, and it's not over yet. That's going to put a further damper on any big initiatives. Really, the impetus is now going to governor candidates in both parties. We have active fields in both parties, so it's a multi-candidate race. And that their proposals, their things that they want to do, are going to be driving the political agenda more and more.
Yeah, and speaking of budgets, aren't we due for this so-called mid-year budget? I know you won't believe this out there. After 101 days, we're done, what, October 7? Yeah. They get the budget. Now we're going in what, less than 2 months?
2 months.
About 2 months? What does Governor Rendell do in 2 months?
This is briefing that the governor has with the legislative leaders. Last year they had it in public. There was supposed to be signaling cooperation. It didn't work. But it's supposed to lay out where the state is in revenues and where they think they're going to be.
When are they doing this?
Well, I'm not sure. Last year they did it in the State Museum. I'm not sure if it will be public.
What's the timing of it?
This is like mid-year in the fiscal year.
So that would be
December 15th.
December 15th, and then 2 months from now, within 2 months, the governor has to present his message to the legislature,
yes,
right?
Yes. And there's a question of how much appetite does the public have? You know, Rendell has warned people not to expect restorations of the fund and the cuts that have come already for several years.
Well, the revenue projections are not all that rosy. I mean,
not great.
The deficits don't look as big as last year.
Right, and a lot of other states are in worse shape than we are.
Yeah. Well, that's the good news. All right, before I let you go, I want to talk a little bit about, let's quickly go through table games. In your judgment, can they get this done before they leave for the holidays?
This is something that it's been one of these. It reminds me of the initial thing with the first slots bill, how long it dragged out, and they're trying to deal with different interest groups. There's new interest in resort casinos, and it really is about the interest groups of this industry that right now, and they're all trying to work out deals.
So it's what casinos can have. How many table games?
How many table games? What the tax rate? You know, what would be more adding more license to the resort category?
And how long can they hold Penn State, Pitt, Temple, and Lincoln universities hostage?
This is really coming down to the end of this thing here with these universities. You know, your tuition bills tend to be come in December for college, as I know, and that's the time when people have to start paying that, so they have to really deal with that.
All right. Well, the final question then is minimal activity between now and the holidays, and next year we got the budget, which will dominate again. Yes,
and then right, would dominate, and then this idea that there's some big reform agenda that waits to the next governor.
All right. Well, thanks as always for the update. All right. We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.